Good Wednesday morning, everybody. Beautiful Wednesday morning here in Central Florida. Hey, we in the 50s again, baby. A little drier air this morning, too. Feels good. Feels good. Whoo-wee. I was talking to some folks yesterday. Excuse me. And I said something, and they'd never heard the term before, and that's becoming more and more prevalent. So let's talk about some terms that I grew up with that not everybody knows about anymore, apparently. So you let me know in the comments if you've heard of these or if you know what they mean and if you think I'm right or wrong. I grew up, one term that I use that I grew up with was, see you tomorrow. Yeah. Good Lord willing, the creek don't rise. Pretty fitting. I stayed at a place in Tennessee where you had a low water crossing. You might not know what a low water crossing is. That's where you cross the creek or the tributary of whatever vernacular you're using at the time. And when the water's low, you don't have a problem. But when the water rises, so when the creek rises, you can't get across it. So that term really meant a lot in that location. Beautiful, beautiful cabin in the middle of nowhere. It was great. You should try it sometime. And then anyhow, Lord willing, the creek don't rise. That's a term that I didn't know was outdated, but I guess it is. I guess it depends where you're at and what vernacular you use. Sometimes we have to translate things in Polk County vernacular here, but that's a little bit different. So some other terms that you may or may not be familiar with. My dad used to say, and I said, it's going to make me madder than a wet hen on a Saturday night. Well, I reckon a wet hen's not very happy, but what's Saturday night got to do with it? But madder than a wet hen on a Saturday night. If it's madder than a wet hen, you might be okay, but if it's madder than a wet hen on a Saturday night, you're getting a whooping. Just saying. Silly little things, right? Things that I guess go away with time. There's a few others I was trying to think of and they escape me right now, but throw some in the comments. Tell me what you think. I know I'm crazy, old coot, but yeah, old coot. That might be something you don't hear much anymore either. Just an old guy, right? And then now they're all kind of escaping me that I want to share them. I said one to my daughter last night, and she looked at me like I had 6 eyeballs and 3 heads. And I just can't think of what it was now. But when I think of it, I'll throw it in here. You see, the memory just gets better every year, right, folks? Maybe not. So sometimes it's good to hear some of those old sayings. My dad was the youngest of 3 boys. He was born in 1940, and his brothers were born in the 20s, and so there was a lot. I had influences from those older fellas, and I really cherished those influences of all my extended family on both sides. I learned a lot from everybody, and sometimes I learned from some folks by their mistakes. And it's an important thing to learn, and it's just as a valuable lesson as anything else. Because if you stayed out of it because you saw what someone else did, hey, hallelujah, right? And just good old memories. I remember my cousin Etienne, rest his soul. He was a great guy. I never had a problem with him. I know there were some family members that said some things, just some people that, but he had a really big heart, and he was a very kind person. And I remember riding in the old pickup truck, the old GMC, and he would make it feel like he was going a little faster than he should be, and over certain bumps, and he'd be like, "Ah, let's do the Dukes of Hazzard." Man, as a kid, that was a blast. When you was in the back of the truck, it was still fun. Didn't nobody fall out either. And there's some real good memories. And I played with my cousin Aaron a lot. We were more like brothers and cousins, fought like it too. But I'll cherish the memories. And he's still around, and he's on YouTube, and he's Millbrook Railroad, and he's got a lot going on. And their house was on the hill on Union Street. It was up on the hill, and outside the door that went in past the bathroom and into the kitchen. And I don't know, I guess that would be the main door they used. I don't know if it was considered the front door or not, because it's opposite side of the street. But out there was this brick raised like flower bed area, but it was full of dirt and there weren't flowers in it. We played with our trucks, made little roads, our little Matchbox cars and stuff, and made little roads and little areas to play around with cars, and that was a lot of fun. It's simple, but a lot of really good memories. A lot of really good memories there. We could, so the house we lived on was up the hill above where their house was, that was up the hill. And the front of our house that faced the street, the first floor was on that, obviously, but there was 2 basements. So we had a deck with some stairs that go all the way down to the back, and because as kids we didn't go through the basements. That was not something we wanted to do, right? And anywho, we could walk down there, and there was a grass area before the next drop and stuff, and we could walk to their house in just in a short little bit. Hop, skip, and a jump, we would say. There's another little phrase. So to their house real easy, and back and forth, and we spent probably more time there than at our house. My aunt and uncle were always really great when I was growing up. My Aunt Arlene and Uncle Duff, I never ever had a bad memory. They had some things that perplexed me and that I learned from, but never have a bad memory of that family. Good, bad, or indifferent. So we were very close until we moved from there to State Street, and then from there to the farm. And the house on State Street ain't there no more. I guess it was falling into the Lake Runnymede, and they had took it down. There's a lot of memories there. That was an interesting house, a lot of parking in the front, and I think there was a hairdresser there before we were there, and there's one area with I think my parents used it as their master bedroom and their shower there. And anyhow, that front floor, when you walked in, you had the living area, and then you had a little short step of stairs that you could go all the way down to the next side to get to the kitchen, but then that little platform went up to the second floor, and that's where there was a main bathroom and a kid's room and a storage closet. I think there was only 2 bedrooms up there, if I remember right, but I remember my windows would open up and you could get out onto the roof over the deck. And then I remember that the closets, they had doors and everything, but the way the roof came down, there was no sidewall all the way to the lower part. It was interesting. Spent a lot of time on that deck, spent a lot of time under that deck, because when you walk out the basement, you were under that deck and there was areas that you could play and stuff. And the basement was different. It had 2 levels of concrete, and it was fun. Fun little neighborhood. I'm going down memory lane this morning and I'm taking you with me. But hey, people often ask, how'd you survive without all this technology? And we did great. And I think we had a better life because we socialized with people, we played, we had our imagination. And I try to, my kids are on the electronic stuff and I hate it, but I try to make sure they go outside and we go camping and we do things so that they can learn the same type of thing. And I want them outside as much as they can. When I was growing up, we didn't want to be inside. I mean, if it was raining hard or snowing hard and we couldn't go outside, we hated it. We stuck inside, and now people rather send you a text message when they're sitting beside you than talk to you. That's kind of sad. So, a lot of real good memories. I have some family members that some people have a hard time getting along with, but I appreciate them a lot, and I don't reach out enough. And family's family. You know how some are, then you act appropriately around how those some are, right? You can't say things to certain ones because they faster than the Ma Bell. And there's another term, Ma Bell. Google it. And then, the whole world will know quick. So, the first place I remember, I really only remember the sandbox. I was really, really little. And it was on Dewey Avenue in Windsor, Vermont. And like I said, I only really remember the sandbox. And until I talked to my dad, I didn't realize I had memories that young. And then the Heartland house that we had, the only thing I remembered there was the linoleum floor. Excuse me. The linoleum floor looked like bricks. Now, that might date me a little bit, but that was really, really popular. And I remember a ramp, and I remember staring up at a ceiling and seeing a speaker. And my dad explained to me what those were. The linoleum floor was in the kitchen, and the speakers were downstairs in the ceiling. And it was, those are some of the earliest things I can remember. Down the road from there, I can remember hanging out with the Coleys, which growing up, we had fun. We'd play in the creek and float boats, build a little dam and float boats, and have a real good time. And a lot of these youngins don't know what fun is anymore. We moved a lot when I was real young, and then I remember we lived in a place over the top of Union Hall, which is the old Miller Airport and Miller Construction. You might know it as if you're from that area. And then from there, I think is when we moved to 8 Clough Avenue, and then we moved to State Street. And my first girlfriend was on Clough Avenue. Well, she was around the corner and up the road. And then we moved to the farm after that. And we stayed at the farm for a long, long time until I was in high school. And then my dad got a ranch-style house up on the hill not too far from it. And that's where we lived till I left home. And I don't think I forgot any place. I remember my first sip of beer was in that Union Hall. My dad, a bunch of guys, and they let me take a sip, and I thought it was terrible. Just saying. So, anyhow, I hope you got some good memories to fall back on, and if you don't, think a little harder. You might actually be able to find some good things from the past.